Hello and welcome. Welcome to this very special workshop, How to Launch Your First Virtual Gallery in Decentraland, a step-by-step guide. I'm Babe Backner. I'm head producer at Decentraland Foundation and the producer of Art Week here in Decentraland. And I'm absolutely delighted to be talking to Nico Earnshaw, who is the product manager of Creator Hub. Hi, Nico.
Hey, Babe, how's it going? Really
Oh,
excited to
really
be.
well.
Yeah,
Okay, I'm new to this. I'm going to pretend to be new to this. You're going to take me through the absolute basics of I'm new to Decentraland. I've just arrived, but I want to build a gallery. And so, step by step, where do I get started?
sounds great. Yes. So, in order to download the Creator Hub, which is our tool for creating scenes in the Decentraland, you just need to go to just go to the main page, decentraland.org, and you'll see that there's a Create tab up here, and that takes you to the download page where you can download the Creator Hub. The big red button for downloading the big red button in the center of the screen is for downloading this tool, and this works both for Mac and Windows. Um, the the whole installation process is pretty standard and straightforward. Like if you're in a Mac, you'll have to drag the executable to the applications and then just run it. And when you are done installing, you will be opening this, the Creator Hub. This is our tool for all creators. This is both oriented for beginners and for more advanced creators too. It's a pretty powerful tool, but also it has some fairly easy, easy on ramps, on ramping stuff. My sorry.
Unramping stuff is good. This is beginner. So, I've got
Yeah,
my
yeah.
unramping stuff in the
Works for
Creator
me.
Hub.
All right. Okay. So,
Awesome.
so once you're in the app, you can pick the Scenes tab. Now, in my case, you'll see that I have a bunch of things because I've been using this for a long time. But if you're new to this, you'll just see the New Scene button. If you click on that, you'll see that there's a bunch of different templates to pick. And in this case, we'll be using the Art Gallery template, which already contains, much of the essentials that you need to build your scene as an art gallery. So I'll pick this one, give it a name.
And does it matter which scene name I use? That can be anything. And can I change it later?
No, I mean, once you've created a scene, you can't, swap to a different template. But of course, you can create as many scenes as you want. You can start a new one from scratch. You're not going to be stuck with just one scene. Like I was showing before, you can have dozens and dozens of them. So this takes a little minute while it installs a bunch of things, and you'll see that I have my already, default content for my first art gallery.
And this is default content that loads with the template.
Yes, yes. So this is my art gallery. By the way, to move, when you're in this edit mode, to move around, use AWSND to move forwards and to the sides. Then you can also use Q and E to move up and down, straight up. And if you click and drag the mouse, you can rotate the camera. So
that's
doing this together,
WASD on my keyboard, Q, and what was the other one?
E. So it's the two keys are on the sides of A, S, W, and E.
Awesome.
And by the way, if you're using a trackpad and don't have a right mouse button to click and drag, you can use Alt and hold Alt while you click the other mouse button. The main mouse button is reserved for selecting things. That's why it's not the main functionality. So in order to move the camera, use the other mouse button. So you can also go through walls and you can see what's inside the building. And in this case, there's a bunch of placeholders for different paintings. We'll now see how you can customize those. There's also a big sign here, which by default says Contemporary Art Museum. You can click on it and edit it. So let's first give you a little bit of an overview of what the main parts of the screen are. So the most obvious and attention calling part of the screen is of course the canvas view, but then on the left you'll have a list of all of the items that are in my scene. Like for example, right now I have the custom text selected, but I could for example select this tree and you'll see that this one is selected instead. And when I select an item, you'll see a panel on the right that displays information about this item that I have selected. For example, now that I have the custom text selected, you'll see that I can, change whatever the, the properties of this item are. So in this case, maybe I want to change this to my art gallery or whatever you want. And I can also change other stuff, of course, like the the font color or the size or whatever you want. You also see that there is position, rotation, and scale information for everything in the scene. So in this case, I I can move things around if I want. Like here,
Mm-hmm.
just click and drag and change the position of the text. I can also do this with Control Z, by the way, but I can also change these values by changing the numbers here. It's
Mm.
here to see with something that is 3D. So if I move this tree, for example, notice that the values on the right change every time I move the tree. But also this works both ways. I can also change these values here and make the position of the tree different. So everything has an X, Y, and Z coordinate. So X and Y refer to the ground level position of something, and the Y refers to um, you know, the vertical position of something.
What about if I move something below the floor? Is that something I can
So
do?
you can. It will partially be invisible, but yes, you can set it to be partially hidden. Um,
And,
in the
and that
Decentraland,
will
you can.
still load? Like
Yes,
if I then put that into my world or into
mhm,
Decentraland, it would will talk through that stage, but that will still
yes,
load if I put things on the
yes,
floor.
yes, absolutely. So let's look at this in action. So I can always click the preview button here and open a window where I can explore what I'm creating as an avatar and experience it in first person. So it takes just a few seconds and I'll be able to run into my scene. So here we are. And this is our tree, which is partially buried. And if I run into my scene, you'll see that there's a bunch of placeholder paintings already, which we'll see how we can, replace those for our own art. And I don't know if you're hearing the background music, but there's also some,
Mm,
soothing, new agey background music inside this. This also comes as part of the template, and we can also change that if we want.
awesome. Top fact, I made those artworks with
Nice,
AI.
very cool. Yeah, nice work. Still counts. Yeah.
Thanks.
So yes, as you were mentioning before, we can put something underground, and we can also put something outside the parcel, the parcels of the scene. So the scene is
Mm,
delimited to what we call a 2x2 like layout. So there's 4 parcels. Each parcel in the Decentraland is just a chunk of land which measures 16 meters by 16 meters, and you can have several of those together, and you can build a scene on top of whatever distribution of these parcels you want, as long as they're continuous. But since the Decentraland is an open world, unlike many other projects, um, whatever is next to my land parcel could be someone else's private property. So I
mm,
can't really invade their private property with my own stuff. So for example, if I put this tree halfway in, you'll notice that it doesn't get entirely rendered. It gets only half rendered. Whenever I change something, by the
mm,
way, notice that the scene reloads. So there we go.
mhm.
The tree is neatly it's been neatly trimmed to not intrude my neighbor's land. Because right now I'm experiencing this as a local preview, and I'm just seeing this with default content on the side. But this, whenever it's published, could be next to someone else's building, and this could be protruding into whatever they're building. So yeah, just a little note about how to move and set the positions of things. I'm now using the default tool, which is the free movement tool. But
Mhm.
up here, you can select between 4 different movement tools. The next one is the more directional movement tool. So you'll notice that when this one is selected, there's a few arrows. So I can use these arrows to move something in just one axis. And this is ideal mainly for moving things up and down, which you can't do with the other tool. But it can also be used to more neatly move something in a straight line. Because with this one, you if you don't want to break formation of something, it can be quite useful. Um, Next one is the rotation tool. So whenever this one is selected, you'll see that there's these 3 hoops, and we can use these hoops to rotate things in different axes. And again, notice how the values here on the
Mm,
side change as I make adjustments to these. And especially for rotation, it's sometimes good to be able to just set everything to 0 and not
yeah.
have to, visually get it just right. And the last one of these is the scaling tool, which has a different gizmo. And you'll notice that there's different cubes for each axis. So you can click and drag and stretch something and have it completely out of proportion. Or let's undo that. I can grab the center white cube and stretch it proportionally and keep keep all the proportions right. And you'll see now when we start dealing with artwork that it's often a good thing to be able to stretch the canvas to get the dimensions right.
And are there limits? So can I make this tree as tall as I want?
Sure, yes. There are no sorry. There are no limits, except that actually, yes, there are limits, and the upper limits depend on how many parcels are on your scene. So
Mm.
just like you have a limitation on the sides, you end up having a limitation on the roof. This roof is really quite high. There's a whole mathematical calculation to know exactly what is the right maximum height, but you can also just test this out and
Yeah.
if I move it all the way up, you'll see that it gets to a point where it's marking that there's something that is out of bounds. So whenever something has these yellow, this yellow cube around it, it means that part of the model is out of bounds. You'll still see the stuff that is inside the scene,
Mm.
but not the part that is out. All right, let's bring this tree back to a normal size. Um, well, yes, as I was mentioning, you have on this side the list of all of the items that are on my scene. As you can see, there's a bunch of things, and mostly you see that there's images that are inside the scene. Now, I can move the camera in and go to these images, but a nice, neat trick is that if I select something and double click on it,
Mm.
the camera will point right at it. And so that is a good way to make sure that you're looking at the right thing. And of course, the thing that is selected is always marked with a yellow, highlight around it. So let's take a look at the images. Now that I have an image selected, you'll see that in the properties, there's a URL. This URL points to the default artwork that Bayu did, but I can swap this for my own art. I can either paste the URL or I can also put a reference to a local file. So let's do that. So I have these assets from a photography contest that we did, and I can just drag a JPEG or an PNG. And if I drag it over to this lower section of the screen and let go, I will be importing it into my scene.
Awesome. So I just open that in a separate window, take it, drag it to the bottom of the screen, and then that
Mhm.
adds.
Yes.
Do I have to be in this item or can I add that
No. No.
photograph?
No.
Okay.
This is still not being added to the item itself. I'm just adding it to the scene assets.
Okay.
So notice that the final section of the screen, which I didn't mention up until now, is the assets section. So this tells me about all of the assets that I can use. Not these assets aren't necessarily in use. So the asset packs section, there's 2 main tabs. The asset packs tab, it just shows me all of the default art that comes with the Creator Hub. So there's a bunch of things. They're mostly thematic things. Like there's a fantasy pack, there's a sci-fi pack. We'll cover this in a little bit more detail later. But then there's also the local assets, which are the stuff that is like in my project folder. And that
Mm-hmm.
includes the stuff that is already my scene. And in this case, the stuff that I dragged into my scene. And there's a whole image, there's a whole like file structure. So inside the scene and images, you'll find that the image that I just dragged is here. But the easier way to navigate this is to use the shortcuts that are here on the side. If I just pick the images, I have access to all of the images that are in the project. Same for 3D models, same for audio. So if I'm with the images, you'll see that this image that I just dragged is here, and I can now just drag it onto this field and swap it.
Ah,
There we go.
okay, cool. Shout out to Make an NFT. This is their image that they submitted for the photography competition, which is one of our winners.
Yeah, it's really nice. So if I now go into my scene first person,
Ah,
I can
cool.
already check it out. So it's there. Now, as I was mentioning before, the dimensions of the canvas, they seem to be pretty well matching, but maybe not exactly matching. I'm not entirely sure. But well, we can check. So if we see the info for this, the dimensions are 2048 by 1366, which is not exactly standard, so might not be exactly right. Well, if you want to get this exactly right, this sadly is when you have to do a little bit of math, because in this case, you can see the scale of this canvas is 7 by 5.
Mm-hmm.
And well, I'm not sure if these are multiples of 7 and 5. You'll have to do a little bit of math and get that right. But if
Neither of us.
let's say that I'm not going to do this right now
No.
to not spend more time on that, but you can, just adjust these numbers and yeah, whatever you want can be done to resize these.
Mm-hmm.
So there's another nicer way to access an image, which is instead of first importing the image to my project and then adding it to the canvas, I can just click the little folder icon here, and this there we go. This will just let me navigate stuff. Oh, sorry, it's in downloads, assets, photograph comp. So yeah, let's say I want to put this one, and there we go.
Mm.
So with this, I'm both importing it into my project. So now if I refresh this, you'll see that the 49 is here. Sadly, the thumbnail doesn't get shown in this view, but it's part of my project already, and it's in use in this image.
Shout out to Lazaro. This is a photo by Lazaro, who's also building for Art Week.
Nice. So yeah, and just like that, we can, cover all of the other paintings. So this one, and by default there are 6 different images. But of course, you can, have as many images as you want. You can delete this one and have this one be the center of the screen, or you can, spread them out a bit more and make room for another one. So, for example, if I want to move this one this way, I can do Control C, Control V, and this creates another image down here. So I can wait, sorry. Did I not copy it fine? Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure I copied it well. What exactly is going on? I'm not entirely sure. As with all live demos. Oh, sorry, I was duplicating this other one, the first one, not the second one, and that's why. There we go. So I have. Am I? No, I'm not entirely sure why this is not working as expected.
There we are. It's just behind the wall. If we move it forward,
Yeah. No.
something's. No.
Seems like there's a bug here. We'll look into this. Seems to be a new problem because I did this last week and it worked.
It's live. It's the
It's
gremlins.
live. Yeah,
Mhm.
classic. Anyway,
So it should
when this
be
works well, which
Control
should be
V.
soon. Yeah,
Yeah.
Control V, Control C, or you can do a right click on the item here on the menu and click duplicate, and that should also copy it for you. And then you can mess around with the scales and get things fitting neatly. What else? So in this template, there's also a couple of NFTs up here on the top floor. So
Mm.
they are not images. They are, yeah, they are NFT images. So the image is taken from a contract on the blockchain. So instead of importing the image as a JPEG or a PNG, you'll be filling in the information for the NFT in these fields, and that just populates it into the scene. So we had a couple that we wanted to use for this. So we have this collection by Rebecca Rose. Let me open the browser. So if I open an NFT, like this one, for example, you'll see that there is, I'm in OpenSea, by the way. So if you open the blockchain details, I don't know if maybe this is too small to see.
I think we
Let's
can see.
larger. So there's 2 bits of information I need. Well, and also I need to make sure that this is an Ethereum contract, because other blockchains don't all work. But there's a contract address and the token ID. So those are the 2 fields that I need to fill in here on these 2 fields here. So the NFT collection contract is this one here.
Awesome.
I can also, by the way, copy it from the URL. And then the token ID is also here on the URL after a slash, but I can also copy it from here, the token ID here. So in this case, it's 95. So with that, I should be able to see my changes here. As you might notice, whenever I change something on the Creator Hub side, the scene reloads, and it might take a couple of seconds to show me everything again. Oh, there's a weird behavior here. This has to do with what the weird thing I was experiencing when duplicating the image. It seems that the duplication is there, but I just wasn't able to see it. I'll look into that later. Anyway, this is the NFT I was copying before. And yes, as you can see, this is also an animated NFT, and that works as well.
Awesome. So nothing changed in the Creator Hub. You need to jump into preview to see the NFT.
Right. For NFTs, you won't see the render of the NFT. And the same applies to images when you're fetching from a URL, unfortunately. But when you're fetching it from a local image, then yes, you can see the image itself.
Awesome. And how would I, so you can see with Rebecca Rose's work that it's portrait. How would I change this NFT frame to fit the work itself?
So just like with the others, you can also mess around with the scale, and yeah, you can maybe make this more square. Since you can't see the image rendered here, you might have to resort more to the numbers themselves. I'm guessing there must be some metadata about the dimensions of this somewhere. To be honest, I'm not all that familiar with what OpenSea tells you about a painting.
Yeah, it kind of looks square, no?
Well, if you see it here, at least it seems to be taller than wide. So I'm guessing that it's probably more like 5 by 8 in any case, or maybe less, 5 by.
Cool. So that changes straight away. So that changes in the Creator Hub, and then when you go in, you can see the image or the video file in that frame.
Yes. There we go.
Awesome.
Another nice detail about NFTs is that you can add frames. By default, it comes without a frame, but there's a bunch of different designs you can go with. So you can pick, for example, the Baroque ornament, and that just adds a little bit of a classy 3D model around it. Some are nicer than others. Maybe that is not that it over promises maybe. But some are kind of fun too. Like the pins, for example, is like it's directly pinned to the wall.
Awesome.
Yeah, there's a bunch of these. Anyway, what else? Music. So you've been hearing this soothing background music all of this time. We can also change that if you want. So if you see the list of things here, you'll notice that there's an ambient sound item here. And I can double click on it just to focus the camera on it, but it's hiding behind the scene there. And just like the images, for example, it has a path to an MP3 file, which is stored locally. If I check out the audio, you'll find it here. And just like with the other kinds of items, I can click on this folder here and pick a different sound file from my scene, or from my local machine. In this case,
Mm-hmm.
for example, I have this one for bird sounds. And now that I change this, you should be hearing a different background sound.
And do I need to save it? So I've changed something, and do I save it in the Creator Hub, or does it save
No,
automatically?
no. Whenever you move or change any field on any item, that automatically saves it, and it automatically reloads the window if you have it already running.
Awesome. Now, you mentioned images from URL. Can you
Yes.
show me how that would work and what
Sure.
kind of
Yes.
URLs I need?
So, yes, there's an interesting caveat about that. So
Okay.
you can't put a URL to any image on the internet. Unfortunately, most sites on the internet, they're not too keen on their content being displayed elsewhere, so they will likely block the showing of their content somewhere else. In this case, we have this uploaded into a bucket that we own, so we're able to just set that without any permissions, any restrictions. There are sites on the internet which allow you to upload stuff without restrictions. Fortunately, I can't recall any right now.
Imgur,
Imgur,
IMG.
yes, I have used that in the past. Um, I'm sure there is a way to get those images to work, but recently I was trying, at least like with a free account and with a basic flow, I wasn't able to find a way. Probably with a paid account you can, or maybe there is some setting that I didn't find, but not with the default settings at least. Um, but yeah, the important part is that the image is hosted somewhere that allows you to display this information somewhere else. And the image can be a JPEG or MPG. And yeah, you can paste the URL just like you can paste the path to a local file right in the
Mm.
same field.
But probably easier for most artists is you just upload your images and just
Mhm.
put them in the
Yeah,
folder.
yeah,
Oh,
definitely.
is there a limit on that? So can I
Yes,
put as many files, as many sizes as I want?
great question. Yes. No, there is a limit to how heavy a scene can be. So you have to see the total footprint of the scene as a whole, counting 3D models, images, sound files, any kind of file that adds to the bulk of size of the scene. And the size of the maximum size you're allowed to have in a scene will depend on a couple of things. So in the Decentraland, there's two ways to publish your content. One is to land inside the main map, and the other is to what we call worlds, which are standalone scenes. If you're publishing to the main map, then the maximum size that your scene can take up depends on how many parcels it takes up.
Mm.
By the so this template has 4 parcels, which means that um, you get 15 megabytes per each parcel, meaning you have maximum 60 megabytes to take up with your scene. And if you're instead uploading to a world, which is a standalone scene, you get 50 megabytes by default, but that can be expanded by, in case you own your own Decentraland name, in case you own mana or other tokens, and with that it can be expanded to much more. So basically, yes, your maximum size depends, but try to keep it below. It's a good practice to try to keep it below 50, because also the more your scene weighs, the more it will take for to be loaded. So that also doesn't help the experience of the user.
And do they have to be high-res images? Because as artists, we're used to sending TIFF
Hmm.
files, like as huge
Right.
PNGs. What's the optimum resolution for images that
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
putting into here?
Better to not send a massive TIFF file. And by the way, sorry, another important restriction is that no file in your scene can be heavier than 50 megabytes. So no
Okay.
individual file, which in this case, I mean, it probably won't, but because the roof for the entire scene is not much higher than that. But yeah. But beyond that, so the engine in the 3D world does do some optimizations whenever it's showing you stuff. So I believe, what is it? 40. Ah, um, what's double 48? It's
96.
4096. Yes, that's it. 4096 by 4096 is the maximum that can be rendered. If you push images that are larger, that won't be a problem, but they will get compressed.
Yeah.
You will lose some quality, and like it will be, just using up space without really serving any purpose. But yeah, it's a great point that you make there. Be mindful of the size of the files that you're uploading. You might run into, a limit if you go crazy with that. Another thing I wanted to mention is that for every one of these, items that I might select and set properties, there's basic information and then there's advanced information. You notice that there's a subtle advanced little separator here, and there's a bunch of other things I can also touch. In this case, for example, for an image, I can also change a bunch of other things about the material. Mostly, I won't need to dive into this, but if you're, for example, you're trying to get a specific kind of glow effect on your art, that might be something that you might want to mess around with. So you might notice that there is some slight change in hue whenever I go up and down. That has to do with some reflectivity values, which I can change here. For example, I can make this fully metallic, and if I go all the way to a maximum value, see that it's there is more of an effect when I move the camera. There's more of a gloss feel to the painting. You could pretend it's varnish or something, and you might not want that. You might want it to be perfectly opaque, so you can set the roughness to 1 and the metallic to 0, and that will remove that gloss effect entirely.
Mm-hmm. So shout out to Paul Moon. This is a photograph called Fire.
Nice. Great. So, what else? Well, you can also, of course, display 3D art in the world. So beyond all of these paintings, we don't remove this. Beyond these paintings, you can also have 3D sculptures. So we had a couple of them over here. So by the way, you can drag and drop multiple assets all at once.
Mm-hmm.
Before I drag just one image at a time, but you can select multiple and drag them together. So in this case, I am uploading 2 sculptures at once, and it takes a second to generate a thumbnail. But in the meantime, I can toggle through them. Seems like the thumbnail didn't work in this case. But anyway, I'm importing 2 different assets, and if I'm happy with both of them, I click import, and here on the models tab, should be able to select them and drag them into my scene.
So
So in
they
this case,
automatically go into models. I don't have to worry about putting them in the right file.
yeah, exactly. And this one. So I just imported these 2 3D models. The scales are a bit small, so I can also adjust that if I want.
So this is a model by Pearl Hyacinth. It's called Neon Garden.
And this one is a 3D. It's a AI generated sculpture of a goblin. Not necessarily modern art, but it's a sculpture. So, by the way, another trick for setting the scale of something is that there's a little lock icon here. If I click on this, then whenever I change any of these values, they will all change proportionally, which is sometimes quite handy to not have to replicate the same value 3 times. So if I now go into the world, once it loads, you'll see that both these sculptures are here in the 3D space.
Now, as an artist, I'm freaking out because I'm thinking my colors have all changed. Like, why have the colors all changed in the gallery?
Well, part of it is the lighting. Part of it is that the renderer here is not the same render that we use when we are loading the world proper. So there will always be differences, but one significant thing that can change how the artwork looks is lighting.
Mm.
And as the scene creator, you can also play around with that. So if you click here on the little pencil icon, you'll open the scene settings. This, by the way, includes a bunch of other interesting things. You can, for example, also change the name of your scene, and that changes what people see up here. In this case, I'm seeing Genesis Plus as a as a placeholder. But when this is
Mm.
published, people will see the name of my scene up here. So it's a good practice to set a name that makes sense. And you can also change the thumbnail, change categories. By the way, let's add art as a category. Um, and I can also change the layout. As I was saying before, this is for parcels, but I can make that bigger. I can say, let's make it a 3x3 and apply the layout. And now notice that
Mm.
there's
Mm-hmm.
much bigger grid. In this case, let's stick to the default. But what I wanted to get to is here on the settings tab, there's also the skybox time. So with the skybox, with the setting, it's by default set to 4:25 p.m. So the sun is always in that position, but I can mess around with that. If I want my gallery to be always nighttime, I can set it to midnight. And now whenever I enter my scene and it loads, let's give it a second. Is it not working? Probably okay. I think I know what happened here. Never mind. I can just close the window and open it up again. Live levels. They're always a joy. So open the
Because of
preview again.
maybe changing the scene size, and then I have
Yes,
to reload again.
yes. That was exactly it. Good guess.
Awesome. So while we're sorting, skybox. So Decentraland has a sky that changes throughout the day, and we call that the skybox. So if you stay in Decentraland, you'll see it goes from day to night and back again. And all the colors change if you're looking at something at nighttime than you are if you're looking at something at midday. So if you're in world, there's a little icon. And we see it here in preview. Can you change the skybox on preview as well?
Yes, but if the scene is setting a fixed
Ah,
time, then you can't. What I can do otherwise is enable the auto skybox time. This
mm-hmm.
will make my scene go through the normal day-night cycle as the rest of the world. So right now it's nighttime, but okay. Looks like if I change this dynamically with the scene already started, then it doesn't catch on.
Now, I've never been able to change the skybox in preview, not yet.
Mhm.
So I think it's one of those things where
Mhm.
understanding that colors can change because the sun's at different places in the Decentraland sky. You can
Mhm.
set that in your build if you want to force a specific time, especially if you're hanging art and you want things to be seen under a specific lighting with specific colors.
Mhm.
If not, you leave it running and then people can take photographs, which is actually pretty cool as well, that you can take photographs at different times of the day, you can see things
Mhm.
in different lights. So it's that kind of artistic decision when you're making something in 3D.
Mhm. Yeah, light at night has a bit more of a kind of violet hue, and at daytime it's a bit more of a reddish kind of hue. Or you can get the sunset timing just right, and everything is like more reddish. So if you want to have the golden hour all the time, every day, you can go for a time like this. And yeah, it also has a bit of a reddish hue. What else?
Awesome. Right, so this is Pearl Hyacinth. I'm a collector of Pearl Hyacinths, and I come in the gallery and I see this sculpture and I say, I want to buy it as an NFT. Can
Mhm.
I link this sculpture to Pearl's listing on an NFT platform?
Right. Okay, so just like okay, there's one more thing that I also wanted to show, but you can add links to external websites and make those clickable. Yes, absolutely. Let me show you something that is just one step simpler than this, which
Mm.
is these little social media cards. So in the scene, I can click on any of these, and they will send me to the corresponding site. So We click on this one. Players will see a little pop-up just as a precaution so that they see the URL where they're really going. And if I continue, this opens up a browser window that takes me there. So you can use these to add links to any of your social media. And there's other options too. Whenever I'm configuring these, notice that here there's an action to open a link, which includes the URL that I'm taking you to. And of course, you can change this for your YouTube channel or whatever other place you want to take users to. There's a bunch of others besides these three. If I go to the smart items asset pack, so I'm here in the asset packs tab here, which we didn't explore much, but there's one of these collections is smart items. These smart items are all items that have some behavior, something. They're not just static art. They do something when interacted with, or they have some kind of way to respond with the user. So there's buttons, levers, doors, moving platforms, a whole bunch of different things. But there is one set of items which I just skipped over, sorry, which is the social ones. And here you'll find a bunch of other social media. They're all they're all really the same. All that changes is really the logos on them. So you could do the same with your own. Like if you want to share something to a different social media, you can do the same and upload a model that looks the same but has a different logo on it, and just swap one of these. So actually, that's what I'm going to do here. So we want to take people to the listing of this on where was this? I had a link for this somewhere.
Object.
Here, yes, and it's this here. We want to take people to this site where the item is listed, right? So one way we could do that is to make the item directly clickable. So we can make the item, a clickable thing. But I would not recommend that for a sculpture because whenever something is clickable and you hover over it, you'll see these little, highlights, this border that tells you that something is clickable, and that might kind of ruin the sculpture. If I add that to the sculpture, every time someone is facing it or pointing at it with their cursor, it's going to have one of these highlights, which might not be what you want. And also, besides, an item, in order to be clickable, needs to have a collider. A collider is basically a separate geometry that doesn't allow me to walk through it. In this case, this item doesn't have a collider. This one, on the other hand, does, for example. So I could make this one clickable if I wanted to, but not this one. But so what we can do is just add something on the side which is clickable and which does let me access this website. So I was thinking probably, you can do your own 3D model and make that your clickable item. But one neat little trick is to do the following. I can add, say, this one here, which already comes with all of the the behavior to be able to open a link, and I can swap the 3D model. So amongst the different information and parameters that you have for this item, one of the ones that I didn't get to cover is the GLTF properties. So GLTF properties tell me what 3D model to display here. And I can, there's a path here which I can swap. So I can just take one of these smart items and just swap the 3D model and reskin it to be something else with the same behavior as what I was, editing before. So in this
could we
case,
make the gargoyle the clickable object for that
definitely.
sculpture?
Yes, exactly. So I have so I could grab this item and add the behavior to this item, but the easier path is to grab this item which has all of the behavior and swap the model.
That's super cool.
So it's this one here. And now this item is clickable and will take me to this link, which is here. So let's swap that for the link that we actually want. Here we go. Let's place our gargoyle here. And I think the small size kind of works well with this. So now, If I
Very
click on the
cool.
gargoyle, it takes me over here. By the way, I can also change the caption. So the hover text says click, but if I wanted something a bit more descriptive, I can do the following. So this goes a little bit deeper down the rabbit hole. But if I click on this plus icon here, I can add extra components. Components are just collections of of properties that can be added to the item. And in this case, what I want is pointer events. And this added this pointer events to the module here. And this case, I can set the hover text to be open listing.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, no. I need to set the button to pointer because that's what we were using for the other thing. Otherwise, it was, there we go. So now when I
Super
hover
cool.
over it, it says open listing. What else do
Super
we
cool.
have?
And could I add a link to a painting? So I just put that. So say make
Yes.
his piece over there. Can I add a link to that to an NFT as well without having to drop that painting in a smart item? How would I do that?
Yes, we can do that. So, okay, we can go the other path, which is adding the interactivity to an already existing item. So in that case, I selected this artwork and can click the add components, and I need to add an actions component, and I also need to add a triggers component. So
Okay.
I added these two things here. So first, I will specify a new action, which is of type open link. So I can just search for link and select the option open link, and I'll give this a name. And here I can paste the URL to the to wherever it is I want. In this case, just for the sake of it, let's use the same URL as before, but of course we'd use the one to this painting. So this specifies that the painting is capable of performing this action, but then we need to tell it when to perform this action of opening the link. And that is what the trigger component is for. So the trigger component, also this can list a bunch of as many different triggers as I want, but the default action is when it's clicked. So whenever the item is clicked, we can now call actions. And in this case, I want to call this action that I defined up here. So I need to first reference the item that owns the action. In this case, it's this one. Always the same.
Image.
Always the item appears first, and it contains this action here.
Awesome.
So with that, we should be done. With that, clicking on the item should be calling the action, this action, which opens the link to this URL. So let's make sure that it works as expected. So there's one other thing missing, which is a collider. I mentioned before. So oh no, it does have a collider. Okay, no, the image does come with a collider by default. So why am I not seeing any feedback? Am I on the right one? Yes. What did I mess up? Do I need to also add a pointer component? Pointer events component. I'm pretty sure I don't need to do this, but just in case.
We'll see.
Nope.
Cool. Well, we'll follow up with that bit.
Yeah.
And we'll do it in the next one. So we're going to have two. We're going to this workshop, which is all about starting with your gallery, and we've gone down the rabbit hole hugely in this, which has been excellent. But we've got starting your gallery. So we've learned how to put images on the wall. We've learned how to upload our own 3D assets, put them in the gallery, resize them, make them clickable, link them to NFTs. Lots of different stuff here that we can do. And obviously, to get around this, we could put an object in front of the image as a clickable object, just like we did for the sculpture. But we'll follow up in the next episode.
Sorry, no need. I just figured it out. The problem, well, it was simply that it was being blocked by the wall itself. So it was a bit too into the wall. So what I did is I just moved it slightly, just like 1 centimeter further up towards you, and with that it worked. So apparently the
That's su-
colliders of the wall um, were getting in the way.
that's super good to know. So images to get a link on them, move them a little bit further towards the avatars,
Mhm.
and then you can be sure that someone can actually click.
Yes,
This has
exactly.
been fantastic. There's one final thing I'd like to ask you before we wrap this
Yeah,
up. So
of
I've
course.
created my gallery, I've hung my works. I want to add some information. So I want to add the title of the work, or I want to add information for visitors when they come in. How can I
Mhm.
add text on the gallery itself?
Great. Yes. So here on the smart items, there is it's a whole category of text items.
Mm,
So the simpler one is just plain text, which is what we actually had on the sign on the outside. So yeah, I can set the, since it's white, you're not exactly seeing it, but let's just set the font to black, and you, wait, why am I not seeing it? Well, anyway, this is the
I think
text,
it's,
and I
is it
can.
tiny? Maybe it's tiny text right now.
No, I think this is the same issue that we had when adding the images before. I'm not entirely sure what
Yeah.
that is, but I'm going to make sure that we fix this in the next few days. There's something wrong with that somewhere. But if,
Ah, there
yeah,
we go.
yeah, there it was flashing for a second. There we go. So yes, I can add text in the 3D space and line that up with the wall so it's not floating in the air. If I could see it, it would be easier. And also, there's a bunch of other, there's signposts, there's sci-fi like um, things that you can hang on the wall. Um, I'm not sure any of these go exactly with the whole aesthetic of the rest of the gallery, but well, maybe they go with your kind of art. So up to you. So these signs have, by the way, they have two nested items. So there's the one with the proper text, and then there's the the framing of the text. So
Mm,
if you select it and don't see the text, don't fret. You just need to open the child item below it to set your text. And yeah, you can put information here.
very cool. And if I wanted to have a load of text, so say with Pearl Hyacinth's work, all that text that's on the object profile, I guess I could just make an image of that as well
Yeah,
and add it as a, because can I add an image anywhere in the room? Like
yeah.
if I took it away from the wall, and could I add another wall? Final question in the basics of a gallery.
So the building itself is not, modular. So you would need to, if you want to match the aesthetics, well, you would need to build something on Blender maybe.
Mm,
But I mean, you can definitely add more walls if you don't mind the aesthetics not exactly matching the same. So for example, we actually have a gallery collection here that includes a bunch of different assets. They're mostly more low poly in style than what
mm.
this default gallery has. So up to you if you think that they are aesthetically a good fit. Um, but there's a whole set of variations of like modular wall sections, and you could build a wall with these.
This has been awesome, Nico. This has taken us from installing Creator Hub, getting our template, starting to hang our works, adding links to our works, putting in 3D objects, uploading things. What's in our next workshop? What's to come?
So we discussed mostly how we publish art, right? How do we get this from your your own local machine and out into the world and have other people be able to experience it?
Because can
Um,
anyone visit it yet? Can I send a link
right.
right now to anybody?
No, not really. I mean, I can run this in my machine, and all of this gets stored as stored in a folder in my machine. I could zip that and send that over to someone else to be able to open it. Um, but they will need to be a little bit tech savvy, and it's probably not the best way to share your art if you intend so many people visiting it. And also, it won't be a social experience. When I open this myself, I am not sharing the world with other people who are opening it on their own. So if you want to be able to, visit it as a, as a crowd and interact with other people while you're inside the world, then you will need to publish it to Decentraland.
Okay, so next up is publishing.
Yes. Yeah.
So join us for the second workshop in this series, whether you're joining us via Art Week, whether you're joining us as a visitor, the visitor center in the Art Week zone. Nico, this has been an absolute pleasure, and I look forward to seeing you again in part 2.
Pleasure has been mine. Thank you so much,
Thank you
Faith.
so much.